My name is Alfred Ladzekpo. I'm from Ghana. I've been in the country since 1966. I taught African music and dance at Columbia University for almost 4 years before I accepted the job to come and teach at CalArts. And I've been at CalArts since 1970, teaching African music and dance. Recently, I've been getting more and more interested in writing plays using African stories. This drum is from Ghana. It's used by the Ewe-speaking people in Ghana and Togo, Dahomey. This one in front of me is called Sogo, S-O-G-O. It's a supporting drum in some of the pieces, but it's also used as a lead in some of the other pieces. Well, how do I teach young people in California how to play this instrument? It's based on my own experience, how I learned the music. Back in Ghana, when I was growing up, there was no formal way of teaching the music to us. So those of us who were interested in music went to performances and stood around and listened, absorbed what we could. But when the veterans, drummers wanted somebody to play an instrument, they would beckon to you from the audience, demonstrate the pattern on the instrument, and then hand it to you to play. If you played it, they kept you. If you didn't play it, they kick you. So what I learned from that was getting the information in your ears first. So when I came to Columbia, I used that method, demonstrating the pattern to the student first, and then I asked them to play. If they played it, well, then they kept it. If they didn't, then I showed them again. And so I carried that over to CalArts when I came here because he has been working. Ghana has its own musical styles. For instance, in Ghana we have about 21 to 25 different languages, so each language group has its own style of music and dance. So what I do here is mainly Ewe. Ewe is one of the language groups in Ghana. But those other dances or songs that I know from other language groups, I do teach those sometimes, but mainly it's dances from Ghana, Togo, and Dahomey because we belong to one language group. That's our timekeeper over. We call it Gankogui, and somebody has to play that throughout the life of the music. It doesn't play itself, right? Somebody has to play it, okay? And that is the timekeeper. You can subdivide the pattern that instrument plays in 4 like this. But the pattern that it plays is cyclical. It starts and then repeats throughout the life of the performance until this is the lead drum. It's the one that controls the ensemble. There is a chord that he will play to start the music, and there is a chord that he will play to end the music. When he plays the chord to start, all the supporting drums enter the music, and the music continues. There are chords that he will play for the dancers to change dance movements. When they are ready, the ensemble is ready to end the performance, there is a specific chord that the lead drummer will play on the lead drum. And when he plays that, everybody knows because music, after all, is communication. It's a language, more or less. So he plays that, everybody knows that that's what he's saying they should do. So they end. And then they go into another section of the performance, which we usually refer to as hachacha, which probably means interlude. So we sing those songs. They are long songs. They may be historical. They may be comments about the social life of the people. And so those songs will be used to entertain the audience because they are very educational. People like to stay around to hear them. And so that's what with the music we do in the music. The dancer, they have a standard pattern, a movement, what you might call a basic movement for that particular dance. And while they are doing that, the lead drummer is also playing a standard pattern. And the supporting drums are playing their standard pattern. The lead drummer is playing the standard pattern. At some point, you're going to hear warning. When you hear the warning, it means you supporting drummers, you dancers keep doing whatever you've been doing, but keep listening to me because I'm going to ask you to do something new. Then you hear that new call at the end of the warning. Then you go into that new thing that he has introduced. And then you see the dancers changing dance movement, the supporting drummers changing the basic pattern into the new call. Now you can hear, if you're familiar with the music, you can tell there is a conversation, musical, rhythmic conversation between the supporting drums and the lead drum. And for a while, that will go on. And then when he decides to end that section of it, there is a call that he will play that takes all the supporting drums back from the dialogue into their basic patterns. And you will see the dancers changing dance movement back to their basic pattern. Basic movement. And then the music will continue again until the lead drummer calls them to do something new. Then they go into that something new. But as far as the drumming is concerned, there is always a standard pattern for the drums. But an individual drum might have room for improvisation. When he dies, then the player will improvise on top of the basic standard pattern. What part is improvised? What part is standard? It's all standard except for the fact that the lead drummer has room for improvisation. And depending on the piece we might add, some of the supporting drums may improvise, but they must improvise within the context of the music. Because it's a dance music. If you do something out of the context of the music, it might confuse the dancers. So you have to be very careful how you improvise. It means there is room for improvisation, but all the instruments don't improvise. A good point. I had a student here some years ago who was playing that little drum, kagang, and he kept improvising. I mean, out of the context of the music. So I stopped him and I said, "You couldn't do that." He said, "I usually hear that there is room for improvisation in African music. Why are you telling me not to do it?" I said, "There is, but you have to know how to do it. If you don't do it right, you'll confuse everybody, more especially the dancers." We debated it for a while, but finally he accepted it. When he learned to know how to do it, he stopped the debate and he continued to play, right? Yeah, so there's room for improvisation, but it depends on the instrument that you're playing and how you do it. If you don't do it right, you'll confuse the dancers. When I'm sitting down here, okay, I'm playing supporting drum, okay? Maybe I have 2 sticks in my hand. He's the conductor, okay? And he says something and I respond. There isn't anything that I do on my own without the lead drummer taking the initiative and telling me what to do. So it's organized, it's a standard music that anybody can learn and be able to do it. The rhythm is there. What is rhythm? Rhythm is a composition of a drum pattern, tempo, meter, intervals. Intervals are very important. The first time I used the word intervals in my class, in the 80s or 70s, late 70s, and people look at me odd. I said, "Well, you might have a different definition for interval when you're talking about Western music, but the definition that I'm talking about is very simple. The space between 2 notes or 2 beats, that's what I'm referring to as interval or intervals. A space between 2 notes are not measured by a rule. You have to hear it. So when you come to play this music, the spaces between the beats are not measured by rule either. You have to hear it. So I'm going to play this pattern for you, and I'm going to play it in time. I'm going to observe the intervals. Once you get it, you have your rhythm. And if you play it right, anybody who is familiar with the music can just walk in and join you and play another instrument. So those things they're applicable to this music also. Rhythm, you're talking about patterns, talking about intervals, you're talking about tempo, texture. Did I know those things, those words, to express them when I was in Ghana? No. I came to learn them because now I saw myself in a position trying to teach or communicate my culture to students and people who wanted it. But every now and then I'll hear something new from them, like ear training, intervals. If they are talking about it, it must mean something to them. So I want to understand that. Maybe if I understand it and apply it to my music, it might help them. So I have to do the work. I understand what those things mean. So intervals mean, okay, so you have to respect the time that it takes you from this beat to this beat. If you do this, that's too long. That's not the interval that is required for that pattern. Okay? If you can hear it and be able to play it right, taking the interval into consideration, you'll be able to be making that music with other people who know the music. But if you can't hear it right and maintain the intervals, you won't be able to play. That instrument, the metronome-like instrument that we have, controls, is a timekeeper. And music, we might say, is time-sensitive. The beat must happen when it's supposed to. If it doesn't, then you're not playing that music. And since that instrument is governing you, you have to obey what it says. And this person here, the lead drummer, he's in charge. But whatever he does is also governed by that, because he takes his cue from that instrument. Now that brings me to another point. In my culture, we don't count the beats on that instrument or any of this instrument either. But there is a reference point in that cycle of pattern that instrument plays. So when a student first asked me where the one of the bell was, I couldn't factor it into what he was saying. Well, what I knew about the cycle of the rhythm. I said, what are you saying? What the one? I don't think about one. I just know that there's the beginning and end to the cycle. And here's the beginning. That's one then. You can put one on it. So one of the things that I learned from my students, yeah, you don't think it, but if you analyze it, that's what you're doing. So it becomes one to me too, and because it works, it's the beginning of the rhythmic cycle on that instrument. So something that I learned from my students, which is applicable. It explains it to the students to know that's what the reference point is. Music, by tradition over there, is considered as an activity for the community as a whole. They are not what you might call professional. They don't do it for a living. They do it to promote their community. They do it when there is a death. Excuse to say, maybe my family, your family, his family. When there is a death in that community, it concerns the whole community. Let's say that person who passes on has been a member of a dance group in a community. Well, when that person is no more, the community has an obligation to perform at his or her funeral as their last respect for that person. They all have their jobs that they do outside making music. So music is not something that they do for a living. They have their own jobs. So there is nothing you might call specializing in dance or music. If you have the skills to play the drum, you play the drum. If you have the skills to do both, you do both. When you talk about another form of art, like sculpturing, if you're a sculptor, well, then you do that as a way of living, making a living, just like a goldsmith goes to his shop or his office to make a living, or a blacksmith to make a living, or a farmer. All these things exist in the society. But then when there is a reason to perform music, then they all come together. And how do they come together? Well, they always have leaders. So the invitation will go to the leader, then the leader will call a meeting for the community. Then the community gets together, then they decide when to perform. Then they go to perform. Which means once that meeting is called and they all discuss it and agree on a date, they made a commitment. If you're going to go to your farm, then you have to go in the morning and come back and participate in the performance. If you don't, you're going to be fined. They will impose a fine on you because you left your community down. If you don't want to be fined, then you have to ask permission. And that permission must be granted before you take off.